Story 1. The Haunted House with No Escape. Jessica had always dreamt of moving to a small town, away from the chaos of the city, where she could start fresh with her family. When they found an old house on the outskirts of town, they were immediately drawn to it. It had charm, weathered wood, a quaint front porch, and a garden that seemed to whisper the secrets of the past. It was perfect, at least on the surface. But what Jessica didn't know was that this house had been abandoned for years. No one had lived in it for over a decade, and there was a reason for that. A dark, unsettling history that no one had ever talked about. At first, the family didn't notice anything unusual. They were busy unpacking, trying to make the house feel like home. But as the days passed, Jessica started to hear things. At night, she would hear soft footsteps in the hallways, deliberate, slow footsteps that didn't match anyone in the house. She would get up to investigate, but every time the house was empty. She thought it was the house settling, the old wood creaking under its own weight. But things didn't settle down. It only got worse. One evening, Jessica was sitting in the living room, reading a book by the glow of a single lamp. The house was silent. Too silent, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. And then she heard it. Faint whispers, like a conversation coming from the walls themselves. At first, the whispers were so faint she thought it was just the wind, but as time went on, they became clearer. Voices. Not just one, but two distinct voices, arguing, muttering, hissing in a language Jessica couldn't understand. She tried to ignore it, convincing herself that it was her mind playing tricks. But she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. That night, when Jessica went to bed, she woke to the sound of something tapping on her window. Light taps like a fingernail against glass. She didn't want to look, but she did. And when she did, she saw nothing. Just the darkness of the yard. But the tapping continued, growing louder, more insistent. She pulled the covers over her head, trying to block it out, but the tapping persisted for hours. Then it stopped. The silence was deafening, but that was only the beginning. The whispers returned, louder now, and more frequent. Jessica felt like she was being watched, like someone was standing just behind her, waiting for her to look back. Days went by, and the strange events escalated. Objects would move on their own. A vase that was placed on the counter would be found shattered on the floor the next morning. The refrigerator door would be left wide open, even though no one had touched it. The lights flickered, and the TV would turn on by itself at night, playing static on the screen. But the worst was the night she woke to the sound of a door creaking open. It was the basement door, the one that had been locked tight. Jessica froze, heart pounding in her chest. She lay in bed staring at the door to the basement, which was now slightly ajar. The hair on the back of her neck stood up, and her breath caught in her throat. She tried to move, to get up and check, but she couldn't. It was as if something was holding her in place, an invisible force pressing her down into the bed. And then she heard it. Footsteps. Heavy, deliberate footsteps coming up the stairs from the basement. She turned her head, but there was nothing. No one was there. Just the oppressive silence that filled the house. That's when she knew. Whatever was in that house wasn't human. It had been there long before she moved in, and it wasn't going anywhere. She tried to leave, but every time she reached the door, something stopped her. It was like the house itself was preventing her from escaping. The walls would pulse, the door would slam shut, and the whispering would start again. She couldn't outrun it. She couldn't hide from it. It was as though the house had claimed her, and in the end she had no choice but to leave, abandoning everything behind. But Jessica isn't the only one who's been affected. The house is still standing there, waiting for its next victim, and though it's been sold multiple times, no one stays for long. The whispers always return.